a hit is a really rare thing. And most of the people I know in the music industry have only been involved with a handful of them. Most of the artists I know have never had one, right? They've had medium size, whatever things, but a real hit is a rare thing. And when it happens, you feel it. Like I've been on the marketing side of 2 or 3 songs that were real hits. And when it happens, your job stops being, oh, I got to find a way to open this door and find a way to open that door. And it starts being, I need to run ahead of this thing and move everything that could possibly trip it because it's doing its own thing.
Welcome everyone to the Indie Pulse presented by Groover. I'm here with Jason Lekberg. Hi Jason.
What's up, man?
Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and present yourself?
I'm a lifelong musician. I perform in a band called I Kill Ya. It's my primary project. I also have another project called Nefariant. And I run a company called Lekberg Enterprises that builds and runs and maintains small record labels for artists that own their own intellectual property. My primary clients in that are Steel Panther, Static X, Gwar, and Dope.
We're in New York right now. Have you always lived in New York?
I haven't. This is actually my 20th year, so I think that officially makes me a New Yorker according to social media.
Is it 10 or 12 years? I don't remember.
I think 10 is, it seems like the transplants like to say it's 10 years, but the locals say it's 20 years. So now I'm a New Yorker.
And what kind of music do you love and is your kind of area of expertise?
My area of expertise is definitely heavy music. So, my favorite music is metal. I make metal, different forms of that. One of the things I love about metal is that every other genre of music exists within metal. So there are a lot of different genres that I play within there, but I also love, just about anything. There's a lot of music I really love. I don't like a lot of modern country or modern rap. But aside from that, pretty much listen. I really love jazz, blues, classic country, and classic rap is amazing, and all forms of rock and roll.
And you said 20 years in New York, but where did you grow up?
So I grew up. I spent most of my childhood. I was born in Rochester and moved around a little bit, but I spent most of my childhood in Indiana, just south of Indianapolis.
And where would you say your love of music came from? Is it from your family or somewhere else?
It's definitely it's something that's in my family. I mean, surprisingly, my father was a pastor, and so he did not encourage the type of music that I listened to. But he himself played. I think he played cello like in college, and my mom sang all the time around the house. And being front pew for 17 years, there was a lot of music in my life. But what really kicked me was at first I discovered B.J. Thomas, his song. What's it called? What's that song called? Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. I discovered that when I think I was like 5, and then I discovered the Beach Boys, and then it was downhill from there.
Okay, you started with the Beach Boys.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
You said your dad was a pastor.
Yeah.
So how did he react when you started developing your music taste?
He used to call the Beach Boys hard rock.
Which
I think was really funny. Looking back now, right at that time, that was an issue for him. He's like, turn that hard rock music down, and then because the funny thing is, then we moved into an apartment complex in the mid '80s where there was less ability for them to kind of monitor who I was hanging out with, and so I got access to local radio, and when I heard Bon Jovi, that was kind of a real turning point, and then that very quickly led to Guns N' Roses and Metallica, and then once he heard that, then that was I don't even know what he called it at that point. Devil's music.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. The Beach Boys are hard rock.
Yeah, the Beach Boys are hard rock, right.
Was there a specific moment where you realized you were going to make music the most important part of your professional life or not? Professional
life, I feel like there's a notebook my mom has somewhere from 3rd grade where I had doodled all of the instruments in a band and had written about how I wanted to make a band, and so I think pretty early on, especially from the Beach Boys, I really understood this was a thing that you could do and got excited about that. And I was pretty singularly focused. I mean, all through high school I had bands and I was like, I'm going to be a rock star. That's what I'm going to do, Professionally, unfortunately, I haven't written that song yet. But probably early 2000s. I had had a band that had some form of success in Indiana. We were on the radio. We were kind of selling a couple hundred tickets, and I was managing the band as well as lead singers do. And I just realized I needed to learn more. I wanted to learn more, and then especially when I moved to New York, then I was immediately like, okay, I want to figure out how I can know more, and I worked my way into the professional music industry, which I've been doing since then.
You said lead singer.
Yeah.
Do you play any instruments? What was your instrument?
I wish. I wish I played an instrument. My mom made me take piano lessons when I was a kid, and I convinced her to let me stop taking piano lessons so that I could take guitar lessons. But then I convinced her to let me stop taking guitar lessons because it hurt my fingers. I was, I don't know, like 10 or 11, because I was going to sing. And it's literally, I say this all the time, it's the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life, because no offense to anybody listening to this or to you if you do this, but guitar players are the worst people to work with on the planet.
Why?
And because every single guitar player thinks that they're Eddie Van Halen. They think that they're, whoever the guitar god is in their world, right? And they just have their own vision and they want to do their own thing. And finding guitar players that want to like collaborate and create something together has just been the bane of my existence. And if I hadn't stopped playing guitar when I was 11, I would do it myself and I wouldn't have that problem.
I totally understand what you're saying. As a fellow person who likes singing, I have one question for you, which is, how did you practice singing at your place with your family? Yeah. Especially if you were singing like hard rock and metal music. How did you practice that without like waking the whole neighborhood?
It's funny. That's a good thing you said. So I distinctly remember, God, it had to be early 90s when Pantera really broke, and Pantera was a really pivotal band for me. I remember playing sick so that I didn't have to go to church, so I could like stand in my living room and practice screaming like Phil Anselmo because nobody was home. So I remember that. And then also there was a short period of time when I was able to like practice in my garage with my friends, but that didn't go very long because, we lived in a residential neighborhood, so they would shut us down. And then eventually, I would say I moved out when I was 17. And then once I had my own place, then it was fair game, like call the cops, that's fine.
Did you move out in Indiana? Yeah, close. Okay, yeah. Great. And why did you move out?
Well, I basically got kicked out because I didn't want to go to church anymore, and I didn't, I was not as big of a fan of God as maybe my father wanted me to be at that point, still. And so that was kind of a line in the sand. They thought, for anyone who's religious listening to this, they thought I was going to be a prodigal son. They thought that they were going to be able to kick me out, and I was going to fall on my face and come crawling back. And my girlfriend and my buddy and I just rented a house, and I never looked back.
So you're a lead singer. You're probably also a songwriter, right?
Yeah.
Do you write lyrics and melody, just lyrics? How was that whole process?
It all starts with a lyric for me, right? So I write as, what are essentially poems, right? And then melody, if I have an idea, I'll try and relay it. But again, that goes back to the guitar player thing, right? That's kind of like my main partner in crime, is sitting down with somebody and saying, let's do this together. And so my role, once I have those partners in a room, is more on the arrangement side than it is melody. Sometimes, in the past I've said, it'd be cool if we tried this and we did that, and throw some ideas in there. But again, not being able to play, my melodic submissions are not always helpful or intelligent in any way.
And you said you ended up managing the band. So how did it happen? And did you like it at first?
I loved managing. I loved the control. Honestly, I'm a lead singer, right? So I loved the control, not so much of the members, but of the direction and being able to be involved in the marketing and the ideas and making sure that things were getting done right. So I loved that part of it. I am no longer a manager, and I don't think that I will really ever be again, because it definitely is not my strong suit. But at that time, I enjoyed it.
So what would you say people would say is your strong suit?
My strong suit is, the first thing I would say is execution. But beyond that, I'll step back to that. Execution is important because I don't know that there are that many truly unique ideas in the world, period, but especially not in the music industry. So I think that one of the most important things you can do in the music industry is just simply do the job, right? It's easy to sit around and come up with a lot of fun ideas and get high and be creative, but like if you don't execute, if you don't get it done, you don't have anything.
I can't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably my biggest strong suit is execution. But then I would like to say behind that, being able to be a creative marketer and understand all of the facets of the business, because that's really what my company does. My company builds small independent record labels for an artist. And in order to do that, we have to know everything from manufacturing and production all the way through marketing and sales and every part of it.
And going back to your like musician debut and when you started, was there a moment you said, okay, this could be something? Was it something that you have like a memory or something?
I joke a lot about this now, but I believe that a significant amount of my life has been a case study in the Dunning-Kruger effect. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard about it. Can you tell us?
All right. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is when you are overly confident about skills or things that you have, when in reality you are not smart enough to know that you don't know what you think you know.
And the more you know, the less you're confident in what you're saying.
Right. But you end up being less confident, right? But so I would say probably from as soon as I understood that it was a possibility, I believed that I was going to do it. And so I've definitely made a lot of choices in my life where, I mean, I worked for Epic Records for a while. That was my first big major label job. And I went to all the interviews and sent all the stuff they want. And I was like, oh, I'm going to crush this job. This is going to be incredible. Of course I'm going to do it. Never worked at a big company like that before. Never worked in a major label before. And I think the second day I was there, went to like an all hands label meeting. And I walked into the huge boardroom with the big Epic Records logo on the wall and sat in a chair and went, I am out of my league. Like at the moment of like, whoa, but until that point, I was like, yeah, what? You've been doing that for 20 years? Whatever, I can do that. Like, I've always had a little bit of delusion, shall we say. So I don't know that there was a moment where I said, this is it. I was just always like, yeah, I'm going to do that.
So how did you get started? How did you find your first bandmates? How did you get into the local scene in Indiana, I guess?
I think like most people who are young, it's high school. Right. So, I was just, doodling Iron Maiden lyrics and writing my own lyrics and stuff like that. And you look for like the one other long haired kid or the kid in the, Black Sabbath shirt or whatever. And you say, hey, we should be friends. We should start a band, and that's kind of the icebreaker, right? Like you don't know anything about the person, but like, we should start a band. What do you play? So that was the early part of it. And then after that, it was getting into the scene was just me again, managing and going, well, we got a band, we got to play, so where are we going to go, and going and finding the clubs where other bands were playing. And I was part of an early network called the Local Band Network in Indiana, which was just like almost a union for bands, and it was just a bunch of us getting together and figuring out where can we play, how can we do this, and it really just turned into a bunch of people hanging out and drinking beer, but the idea was nice.
Really cool. So you started with the stage, with playing live, I guess.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the first time you recorded a song?
Yeah. I did a song because we were in Indiana, which is a very religious place. The best studio that I could find was owned by the Gaithers, which is a gospel group, like a Christian gospel group. And I don't know how I convinced their engineer to let us come up there and record. But it was funny. He asked us to not put him in the liner notes. And at the time, he was like, I do a lot of religious stuff, and I feel like it just wouldn't be good for me to be on a secular band. Listening to that now, I realize that he was like, I don't want to have anything to do with these guys. They are horrible. But at that time, I thought he was just, trying to be demure. But yeah, it was horrible. Like, we didn't know how to play to a click. We were trying to track the song, and the drummer had messed up a part, and we were trying to punch him in, and he just couldn't get it right. So we did an entire band punch, literally like set the whole band up and just counted in and just played the second half of the song. It was I thought it was magical, but looking back now, it's,
And did you get a demo after that? What did you do with that?
Yeah, I got 2 songs. And we're talking about 90s now. So like, there was no internet to put it on at that point, or the internet that existed wasn't accessible enough. So we just had, some CDs that we handed out and gave people, and it was part of our press kit. you know.
How many CDs at the time?
God, I have no idea. I remember I bought one of those big CD burners that burned like in real time though, because I would,
Oh, you made them yourself?
yeah, because again, I'm entrepreneurial. I'm like, I don't like, what am I going to pay somebody? Like, I'm just going to buy this machine myself and do it myself. And so I'd have no idea how many I made. Hundreds probably, I don't know.
Amazing. And so from there, like, how did it go to the next step? How do you feel it happened?
I mean, we got better as a band, first of all. Like, I'll say that. And then probably went through a couple of different bands, playing as much as we could, playing as often as we could. And then finally in the late 90s, I ended up in a band that, there were a lot of positives. Listening back now, I'm not super proud of it, but there were a lot of positives, and we worked really hard, and we kind of became like one of the bands in Indianapolis, one of the rock bands, and we just would play the circuit with this 5 or 6 other bands, all the bars we could, and started to develop a following.
You're also an entrepreneur. You started companies, you helped a lot of artists setting up their labels, and did a lot of things in the music industry. How did you get in that part of the music from being a lead singer in bands? How did you get over that barrier, if I can say?
Again, going back to that Dunning-Kruger effect, I was a house painter, was my profession in Indiana. And then when I came here to New York, I painted for a while here. But I got kind of an opportunity and hat tip to my ex-wife. I said, I got the opportunity to either go back into the field. It was kind of a slow time in painting. I was in management at that point, or leave. And I said to her, I want to go figure out how to get in the music industry. And so she said, all right, let's give it a shot. And so I went and interned at like an early global music news blog. This is like 2006. And then I also interned at a publishing company, which was really a husband and wife songwriter who then started their own publishing company. And I interned at both those for about 5 or 6 months, I think. And I got an opportunity through a friend of a friend to go work for this emerging startup that was marketing the intersection between, at that time we called it Web 2.0, now we know it as social media, Web 2.0 and entertainment. And it was just it's now a bar on Grand Street in Williamsburg before anybody was out there. But it was just this room full of like, 20-somethings making cash, being paid cash. I think it was $1,500 a week or a month, $1,500 a month in cash, making up what we now know as social media marketing. Literally, like we were the first agency of record for Twitter, for Eventful, for Reverb Nation, for all these huge companies. And we did 50 Cent and T-Pain and Kanye and Lil Mama and like everybody, because we were the only people working in this space. And after about 10 months, the owner of that company he was a little bit of a rabble rouser, shall we say, and he made some people in the music industry angry. But the larger music industry realized these kids are figuring it out. They know what's going on. And so they just kind of came in and cherry picked a bunch of us. They came in and just said, every label came and grabbed somebody. And I went to Epic. And basically the people who run digital media in the music industry now, the majority of them are all alumni of that company.
It's like a mafia.
It's crazy. It's kind of crazy. It's insane. And it was really just because this guy, despite the fact that he torpedoed the company, had this vision and understood like this is where it's going. And then just put us all in a room and said, hey, I signed a deal with this social network for pets. And 50 Cent has a dog. Figure out what to do with that. And
that's funny.
And I'm serious. That's an actual thing that happened. Like that is exactly what happened. And we were like, okay. The social network was called Anamigo. It lasted for about a year and a half. And we made a profile for 50 Cent's dog and had it be friends with Kanye's dog. And like that, that was that time.
And when you worked for that startup and then for Epic, how did you keep afloat in like playing music? And did you? Or were you able to?
Yeah, I still play. Yeah, I still make music. Yeah, that was actually a really good time for me making music. I feel like at that time the band that I was in, which I still have, actually kind of caught a little bit of a wave of what was happening in metal. Unfortunately, I don't know that I was as aware of it then as I am now. Looking back, I'm kind of like, oh, we were that. But but it was good. I do my best not to leverage my professional business to help my band. I know the right people, so I can make sure that, hey, you have the opportunity to hear this, but I don't leverage it, you know?
It's an important thing because there are so many people in the music industry that are in the music industry, but they're also like creatives, they're also musicians, they're also producers, and sometimes it's very hard to like manage like the lines and the blurriness between these. Also because the music industry is hard to navigate and to make money in, so you usually need to do a lot of different things. So what is your take on this? Like, should people really assume that they are like also musicians and they're also in the music industry? Should they like hide it? What is your take on that?
I hid it for a long time. I didn't really talk about it for a long time. And I remember there used to be this thing that was run by the president of Metal Blade Records called Metal Summit. It was once a year, and he just picked a location and invited managers and labels and all different people to get together just in the hard rock heavy metal world and just kind of discuss like the state of heavy music and how we could help each other. And there was a booking agent there, and we were at this big round table discussion who knew that I had a band, and we were talking about putting together a tour of a couple of different labels' bands. And he goes, "Yeah, Jason, like your band could open." And I was like, "Yo, like." You know, and afterwards he came up to me and he was like, "Why? Like, what's your problem?" And I was like, "Dude, like, I'm not trying to like leverage the fact that I represent Lamb of God and Ozzy Osbourne to help my band." And he said, "Well, but why not?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Dude, you got to own this." He's like, "Are you a musician or are you not a musician? Like, what are you doing? Like, you don't have to be underhanded and dirty, but this is who you are. Be who you are."
And when was that? Like
2010 probably.
And do you have like a different take on this right now? Like, did you evolve on that side? And
I definitely make it, I don't hide it, right? Everybody knows that I'm in a project. And in fact, some of the clients that I've worked with, some global artists have been kind enough to promote my personal projects at different times, which has been amazing. I've had literal global rock stars go on stage in shirts from my bands and stuff, which has been amazing. But then at the same time, if there's a discussion about an upcoming tour, I'm not putting my band up for the opening slot. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm realistic about what is available and what's right. Like if if my personal project is putting 500 people a night in a room in New York City and there's a show coming through and it's light on tickets, then maybe I'll raise my hand and go, "Hey, look, I can put a couple $100 in this room." But otherwise, I'm not going to ask, one of my bands to take my band out who are worth 10 people in Boise, right? I'm just taking money out of their pocket.
So music is roller coaster. You have like good moments, you have bad moments. Could you tell us a bit more about like some setbacks you might have had during your career? Maybe one particular one or several ones? Sure.
I mean, from my personal musical journey, the biggest setbacks I've had have been related to guitar players.
Still.
Always.
I hope we're not going to receive a guitar player. Or maybe the guitar player is going to say, "The hell is lead singers."
Yeah,
and we're going to have possibly.
Who do you think came up with the LSD, lead singer disease? That was absolutely a guitar player who came up with that. No. There was a lot of, so that project that I keep talking about, which I've had and I still have, it's a band called I Kill Ya. And we were gaining some real momentum from 2012 to 2017. We were touring a lot. My business was doing well. I was working on the road while I was touring. And we went out and did a really long, very brutal, a lot of just like circumstantial bad things happened, breakdowns, kidney stones, crazy stuff happened on the tour, right? 8.5-week US tour. And when we came back, the guitar player was like, "I quit." And it was the first tour on the new album, right? So we had just built it up. We were just getting going. That was a really low moment for me because I was so tired from that 5 years of touring and running a successful business where I'm out there not sleeping and I'm driving, and then I'm still running my other business, where I'm like on conference calls and, doing meetings from truck stops and whatever else, so I was just run ragged. I was pulled at both ends, and having him walk at that point was just very difficult, especially because I didn't feel like I knew anybody else. He was an unbelievable talent, unbelievable player, and I don't believe that I knew anybody else at the time who could replace him. and it just took all the wind out of my sails. And I actually ended the band at that point for almost 7 years. Yeah.
And then you started again with the same guitar player or not
No.
the same?
No,
Are you still in touch?
no, we don't speak.
That's crazy. It's like
Yeah.
it's bandmates is like family sometimes in that
Yeah.
in that sense that sometimes you have like a big thing happening with a sister or a brother and you don't talk anymore. Yeah, that's crazy.
I would say it's worse than that, because even with a family member, I think there's a certain amount of like, I don't know, there's a responsibility you feel to like figure out how to make up with them. Like if I see him walking down the street, I'm crossing the street. Like that's how I feel about that person.
It seems like a moment where you basically felt like completely overwhelmed with what was happening. Can you tell us how you do when you feel overwhelmed with like you have your job, you have the music on the side, you might have like a family, I don't know yet. We're going to ask you. How do you do when you're like overwhelmed with things? How do you deal with it?
I feel like I don't know if you know the technology Asana. It's not going to be an Asana commercial right now, but it's the ability to create to-do lists, right? And for me, that is being able to structure things that are necessary is such an important thing, not only because it allows me to keep control of that, right? And control is the wrong word, but like when it starts feeling out of control, you can go, okay, I know what I have to do. Here's what I need to do. Here's what I can do. So having that organized ahead of time is really, really important to me. And then also just giving myself the ability to walk away, and that's been a big thing, is just remembering, this is rock and roll. Like nobody's dying. It's okay. And sometimes I just have to take a weekend where I'm like, I'm going to scan my emails once on Saturday and once on Sunday to make sure nothing's on fire. But otherwise, like, I just need 2 days.
So when you have to quit, when you have like this kind of setback and you're going away, do you see it as a failure or as a rebirth?
I think the only thing that qualifies as a failure is when you don't follow through on your commitments. That's the only thing I would say is a failure. Everything else is, you know what? I'm not going to be able to say it better than this, so I'm going to say it how Einstein said it, which is that he has never failed. He's only found 10,000 ways that don't work. Right. And that's like what the process is. Like failure is part of the process, right? In that sense, I hate to use that word in that context, but it is, because you're not going to understand what doesn't work until it doesn't work. So you just keep trying, you just keep doing what you do. And if you need a break, that just is what it is. You're human.
How do you find the drive and the motivation to keep on going when things are tough?
Yeah, that's a really hard one to answer. Again, I have to go to the Dunning-Kruger effect a little bit. I think a lot of it is me just kind of having told myself this is who I am and this is what I do, and that allows me to almost make doubt be its own separate thing. You have your times when you doubt, and that just is what happens, but it doesn't mean that you don't get up tomorrow and do it, because this is what you do, partially. And then, not to get too incredibly philosophical, but I'm pretty nihilistic overall about existence. And so to me, forward motion is kind of the only point of existence. So I have to, because if I don't, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? Not to go too deep, but I like to use the analogy. It's kind of a funny story that humanity has invented and forgotten indoor plumbing 3 times. And it has. There was a Chinese dynasty that had indoor plumbing. It fell. We forgot about it. It was invented in the Middle East at a certain point. That dynasty fell, or that, whatever empire fell. We forgot about it. It was in Pompeii. That fell. We got to run, whatever. The Roman Empire fell. We had the Black Plague. People were like, hey, what would fix this if we had indoor plumbing? And then we dug up Pompeii and we're like, oh, look, they had indoor plumbing. So what are you and I ever going to do that's going to be more important to humanity than indoor plumbing?
I don't know.
And it's been forgotten 3 times. So you just kind of have to let go and be like, this is what I do, and failure's part of it, and just going to keep doing it.
That's interesting, because you're saying basically that you need to do things with intensity, you need to work, but at the same time realize that you're not possibly changing the world, but still like keeping going. So
yeah,
it's tough, right? It's like contradictory in a way.
It is contradictory, but I mean, I don't really think it is if you step back and look at it, because who is changing the world? I mean, like really, like if we look, especially in our current environment, now we're gonna get political, but like if we in our current environment, the people who are changing the world, I don't want to be anything like those people.
I agree.
Those are not the people who like I share morals with. So, the only thing we can really do is make our local environment and the people around us better, and that's what I focus on.
So going back a bit to, you said in your like professional career, you arrived at Epic Records. How did it go from there? Like, what did you do at Epic, and what did you do after that?
So at Epic, I started in digital marketing, as you would assume, coming from that world, which was cool. It was great. I did a lot of really awesome campaigns with some great bands. But about a year and a half after I was there, Epic was arranged into a series of pods, as they called them. So they had a product manager, a publicist, and a digital marketing person that all worked on the same artists. And the product manager in my pod got the opportunity to take a much higher role at Columbia. And when he took it, he kind of gave me his blessing to be able to take over his role. So I became a product manager, and I oversaw all of the rock and metal releases there for about another year and a half. But that was during... we don't have to talk about it. It was during a big period of transition for Epic Records. And shortly after I ended up leaving Epic Records is when L.A. Reid came in as the president with a very different set of priorities. Rock and roll wasn't really much of a priority even before that for them, and I'm very much the rock and roll guy. So yeah, there was like... And I also, to be fair, like, major labels are not a place for me, and I think it had become kind of obvious that it wasn't a place for me. So it was a mutual thing. I had a band that I was working with, a band called Hell Yeah. A couple of members were in a band called Mudvayne, and the lead singer, who's in both bands, had gotten had a new manager, and that manager owned a management company and also a record label. And he just kind of said to the owner of that company, "You need to meet with Jason." And so he and I went and had lunch, and the guy offered me a job on the spot. So I went to that label and ran digital and was also a product manager for them for a few years.
So you went from like major record label to an indie structure, kind of. So what was the biggest difference, or the biggest differences you could find?
I would say the biggest difference was
the lack of money. Apart from that, no way.
No, believe it not. No, I mean the label I went to. I'll just tell you, it's now known as Better Noise, but at that time it was called 11/7 Music. They had a couple of divisions, 11/7, 5/7, and then the management company was called 10th Street. And the owner of the company was not hurting for money. Like, we didn't spend as much as we did at Epic, but we definitely weren't scrounging around for pennies trying to figure out how to make it happen. At that time, I think it was Billboard's #1 rock label, and even still is one of the most powerful rock labels out there, indie labels. So it was, not dissimilar in that sense. I would say the thing that was the most dissimilar was how much control the owner had. Because the owner really was very involved, and his whim really led things in a way that wasn't the case. I don't even know who the owner of Sony was. I never saw the owner of Sony, right? But even the president of Epic or the GM of Epic didn't have as much sway as the owner that Indie did.
And when did you decide to create your own company? And can you tell us a bit more about the idea of like helping artists set up their own record labels, and
Sure.
Where did it come from?
I mean, as I said, being an artist, coming into the business side with an artist perspective, my goal was to learn more myself, but also to help other artists. And once I got to the major labels, I realized that it was not what their business is about, right? Like, it's great if the artists do well, and there are many people at all labels, major and independents, who care very much about artists and art, but the reality is it's about keeping their business in business, right? Keeping the lights on. At that time, I was on the 23rd floor of a 34-story building that spanned the entire block between 55th and 56th on Madison. Right, I mean, a huge building that takes a lot of B-side hits to keep the electricity on. So I realized very quickly that was not really achieving the goals that I wanted. And during that time period, Radiohead put out In Rainbows and Nine Inch Nails put out With Teeth, and both of those bands put them on their MySpace pages for people to buy. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me.
If I remember correctly, Radiohead put it where like you could choose if you wanted to get it for free or if you wanted to pay something. And I think
Yeah.
like the average price people pay was like $6 or $7 or something like this.
I didn't remember the number, but
I think it was something like this. It was a defining moment also for artists going DIY, right?
Yeah. And when they did that, I mean, obviously I had already been involved in the digital space. I was heavily involved in that, but watching them do that made me really go, this is a business. Because Radiohead and Nine Inch Nails know how to make records and they know how to talk to the public. But are you going to tell me that Trent Reznor knows what an ISRC code is? I bet he doesn't, right? And so I thought there is a business there to be the infrastructure for these artists that can speak directly to their fans and do all of the back end stuff that they need to be able to run their own labels. So I actually wrote the business plan for my business when I was at Epic, but I didn't feel like it was the time to go when I left Epic. I wanted the indie experience. Frankly, I didn't feel like I had enough experience yet to be able to sell myself. So even going to the indie world, my plan was I'm going to spend a couple years here and go. And that's what I did, just under 3 years.
And when did you start your company?
September of 2013.
Great. And who did you start it with?
A band called Steel Panther. So it was actually very fortuitous. I had already planned, my wife and I had already discussed that January 1st, 2014, I was going to quit and I was going to start my business. I didn't have any clients yet, but I was ready. And in August of 2013, I got a call from the woman who was running digital marketing for Steel Panther. And she said, hey, do you know any independent product managers? Steel Panther want to do their own thing. And I happened to be going out there in like a week or two for an Escape the Fate video, actually out to LA, which is where they're based. And I was like, I'm going to come see you. And so I went and had a meeting and I was like, and I pitched the whole business like, this is what I'm doing. And to their credit, the guys in Panther got it. And they're still my client, my longest running client.
Amazing. Can you tell us more? So it's been like more than 10 years that you've been working with them. 12 years.
Yeah.
So what did you do exactly for them? And do you have some like fun stories to tell us about that time?
I mean, it was Steel Panther. There's a lot of fun stories.
That's why I'm asking.
So what I did basically and what I do is I built the entire infrastructure for them. So they have a record label called Steel Panther Incorporated. We have global distribution. And so we do everything traditional that a record label would do, which is, distribution to the DSPs, Spotify, Apple, everything else, promotion there, distribution to retail. So physical retail, getting product into stores to sell. Then the marketing side of it. So overseeing publicists, not just here, but around the world, advertising as well. Steel Panther's not much of a radio band, but in the case of bands I work with that are radio bands, then hiring and managing the radio teams as well, and then also the social team. And then a big part of what we do is building a direct-to-consumer business for the bands. So all of my artists' websites are actually built on Shopify. So they look like cool stores because we've coded them up, or cool sites, but they're really stores. And we focus on selling everything that we make directly to the consumer, because I believe, and the premise of my company is that the only two things that matter are music and the relationship with the fan. And so that's what we do. We build and manufacture and we make and distribute and sell all the products. So if you followed Panther, we just released our 5th guitar pedal. We've done skateboards and toys and all the traditional merch you can think of, and anything you can think of, we make it, we manufacture it, and we sell and ship globally.
The heavy rock and metal scene is quite different from like other genres on that side. Like physical products is still like very, very important in that scene. It can be the case in other genres, but it's particularly the case, I feel, in the heavy rock and metal scene. Mm-hmm. How did you take advantage of that? How much does it represent in terms of like, I don't know, the sales or the revenue that the band is like generating?
I mean, I believe that, again, the music's the most important, right? So it starts with that. Look, sales have declined as they have for everybody, primarily because your passive fan isn't looking for, they don't want a record, they don't want a CD at this point, right? Because they get their music through streaming. But music sales, physical media is still a significant chunk of revenue. Everybody in the industry right now is talking about superfans and monetizing superfans. I mean, this is what I built my business to do 12 years ago. Everybody else is a little bit behind the curve on this. But it is something that it's valuable because you look at that superfan, right? There's that old marketing adage that 20% of your customers drive 80% of your value. It's the same thing here, right? If you've got 1 million fans on Facebook, if you've got 200,000 in your email list, you are making plenty of money selling them records and CDs.
If you're talking to a band or an artist who they have built their image, they have everything ready to be able to like build that kind of community, and they're starting to have people following them, it's just starting or like igniting like something. What would be your advice to them to like make it like a big like fire or something that at least they can live from?
I mean, the most important thing is owning your data. Right? It's just owning, you've got to own that fan relationship. I use this example all the time. You know, if I make, and I view it as similar businesses, right? If I make cookies and I decide that I'm going to sell my cookies to a distributor who puts them in 7-Eleven, and you go to 7-Eleven and you buy a cookie and you go, man, I like this cookie. If you want another one, you don't come to me. You go to 7-Eleven. Right? So I have no relationship with you. I have no ability to sell you a t-shirt about that cookie. I have no ability to sell you a cake that I now make that's kind of like the cookie, right? If 7-Eleven goes out of business or decides to stop carrying my cookies, I have no way to tell you I still make my cookies, right? So like owning that fan data and that relationship is massively important. And retail is important. Look, our record stores are incredible spaces where people get to discover new music, and I love them. But I believe you really have to understand the balance of distribution through those channels, but also making sure that as many people are in your pool as possible.
So 12 years with Steel Panther, and you're probably working with other bands and artists for sure. What for you is the key of a great relationship and a great collaboration between an artist and a music professional?
Definitely respect. I mean, that's the most important thing, and I think it goes both ways. You know, I think I've worked with some artists in my career that I've been like, wow, I don't know how these guys got a deal, you know, and that I don't think it's not good for them, right? Because they may be great musicians, right? They may be writing great songs, but if I'm not moved by it, then I'm not going to respect them in the same way. I'm not going to provide them the value that they deserve. And then on the other side, you know, I work very hard, and the people who work with me work very hard, and the artist understanding that and saying like, hey, we value the work that you put in, and let's all come together to make this be something big. I think that's definitely the most important thing about a relationship, because it's not just an exchange of money.
You've probably worked with artists and other pros and thinking some of them are grateful and some of them are ungrateful. How do you deal with that? Because it's sometimes hard to understand what to do with that kind of situations.
I mean, I have resigned from several projects, and in fact, I would say every project that I've resigned from has been because of a personality of one of someone involved, one of the key members, where I've just said, this is either not a person that I want to work for, whether just morally or whatever, or just simply, you know, I don't care how big the check is you're writing me, it's not worth dealing with you.
And when working with other artists, did you have big moments of like very strong emotion that you felt maybe during a show or during something happening? And can you tell us a bit more about that?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you my favorite one. I tell it all the time. There's a band called Alter Bridge. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I know them.
Yeah, so it's three of the members that used to be in Crüe with a guy named Miles Kennedy singing. And Miles Kennedy, if you've seen the movie Rockstar, he's the guy at the very end of the movie, and he's actually the only person in the movie who sings with his own voice. He's the guy that gets up on stage at the very end. But we did a Billboard session, which is where, you know, you go into Billboard offices and you play a couple songs and they film it and they put it on their site. This was probably 8 o'clock in the morning on like a Wednesday on a press day. And I've done these with many, many artists. And as singers know, early in the morning, it's a tough time sometimes to be great, right? And they did 2 songs off their new album. At that time, we were promoting an album called Fortress. And the producer of the Billboard session then said to Miles, would you play this song, Watch Over Me? And she was like, it's my birthday, and that's my favorite song by you. And so he sat back down, just him and a guitar, and did Watch Over Me. And like, I'm serious, I'm getting goosebumps now. It was unbelievable. It was one of the most like moving, it was just, he's a star, and it was just an unbelievable experience.
It's fun because like sometimes when we think about heavy metal or rock bands going into like the ballad or folk acoustic mode, we realize that they're like just the best musicians and the best singers. Like Extreme with More Than Words is like one of the examples for sure. So it's crazy that you tell that story. Do you have like some other like bands or experience like that, like where like you saw like Stripped Down and you're like, what? This is the essence.
I definitely, I don't know necessarily about Stripped Down, but I will say that one of my favorite things about working in the music industry has been the very clear understanding that a good song is a good song. And it doesn't matter if it's being played by a country artist or if it's acoustic or if it's heavy, or a good song is a good song, period. And that has been a really cool thing to experience, is like, I love this song, and then you hear it in a different format and you're like, it's still a great song. And that's cool.
Can you think of a song that you've made and you think, okay, it's the best song I've written or I've produced or I've made?
The best one I've made? Wow, that's a tough question. No, I can't. Look, there are songs that I'm happy with, but I'm an artist, man. Like I'm always striving for something I haven't reached yet. So I don't know that there's any songs that I would say like, I got it on this one. And I think if I did feel that way, I probably would have that hit I'm looking for.
That's great. Now probably just a few more questions about like some defining moments and defining very like clearly like the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
What was your craziest experience playing on stage?
Playing on stage? I mean, I've had some wild things happen on stage. I would say probably the most positive one, though, 2010-ish, Danzig's booking agent invited my band to open for Danzig at Hammerstein. And it was already sold out. And the booking agent was just kind of eyeing us and saying, like, he might want to work with us. And he was like, do you want this opportunity? And I was like, yeah. So we weren't announced. Nobody knew who we were. We opened before the package. The curtains opened in Hammerstein, and the crowd thought we were a band called Corrosion of Conformity, who was actually going to be playing next, but we weren't. And that was insane. Standing on that stage, 2,300 people completely sold out, just like looking up, like, what is going on right now? Like, that was a really, really cool moment. I'll never forget.
Was there an opportunity that was offered to you that you declined, and today you say you regret it? You regret declining it?
I wouldn't say that there's anything that immediately comes to mind, like, oh, this is the one we missed on. Yeah, no, I don't think so. I really don't think so. I can't say any specific thing that, like, okay, I messed this up or I screwed that up. But I would say in general, I would say the biggest mistake that I've made is not understanding the larger value sometimes, and maybe sticking to my guns again with like some of those guitar players, right? Like, where maybe I should have been a little more flexible and kept people worked a solution that worked for both of us a little better. I would say that would probably be the biggest thing. But there hasn't been any opportunity that I've said no to, because when having worked in the business as long as I have, like, when those opportunities come along, I kind of know what they are, and I'm like, yeah, we're making this happen.
Is it a piece of advice you would give artists, is mostly say yes when somebody is interested in what they're doing and they're offering something, whatever it is? Or would you tell them you need to choose and pick your battles? I
absolutely say choose and pick, because there are so many people out there who are being offered things that are just not livable. And more than just that the offer isn't right, but that the initial ask doesn't represent what's fair and what potentially is there. You know, if you've got a band that's going out and headlining and they say, well, let's see if we can get a band to open up for $100 a night, but they really have $250 or $300 a night. If you take that 100, you're selling yourself short a little bit, especially if you're worth the $250 or $300, and you may be putting yourself into debt in a way that will be difficult to get out of later. Because in that growth cycle, you're in this period where you spend a couple of years just going, we got to take this bet, and then we got to take that bet, and the next one's going to pay off, and the next one's going to pay off. And that's why so many bands didn't make it through COVID, because there were bands that were leveraged, like credit cards deep and debts to their family and everything else, and with the belief that the next year, it's because we're here now, and then this happened, and then that happened. Next one, it's going to pay off. And then COVID happened, and it was like, no, you have no ability to pay this back for 3 years, and it killed many bands.
That's a very interesting point, that artists need to invest a lot in the beginning and to bet a lot. And what would you say is the moment they need to stop, or they need to reconsider, or they possibly need to say, I need to find like a side hustle or something to fund this?
And that's a personal choice. It's really a personal belief. And it's a hard thing to say to an artist, because you never really know which one's going to be the next one and which one's going to make a difference. The one thing I would say that would kind of give this advice, but from a little bit different angle, is that a hit is a really rare thing. And most of the people I know in the music industry have only been involved with a handful of them. Most of the artists I know have never had one, right? They've had medium size, whatever things, but a real hit is a rare thing. And when it happens, you feel it. Like, I've been on the marketing side of 2 or 3 songs that were real hits. And when it happens, your job stops being, oh, I got to find a way to open this door and find a way to open that door. And it starts being, I need to run ahead of this thing and move everything that could possibly trip it because it's doing its own thing. And when you feel that, when that surge happens, when the phone starts ringing and the email starts coming in, they're from places that you didn't solicit and you had no idea, and those opportunities are coming, bet it all. Because you very likely are only going to get one time, and that's a hit, then go. I was very, very lucky. I came in a little bit late, but probably the biggest one is that I worked Sarah Bareilles' Little Voice, which obviously had, Love Song was the big song on that one. And then a couple of other songs. Steel Panther had a song called Glory Hole.
The music video is...
Yeah, I made that music video.
Oh, that's crazy. You made it. How did you make it?
I made it from the perspective that as the product manager, it was my job to hire the video director and oversee all that. And video director is still a very, very good friend of mine, and was very intimately involved in the staging and everything that we did. And yeah, that was a crazy one. That one.
Can you tell us a bit more about shooting the video and the behind the scenes?
Sure. I mean, that I can tell you a couple crazy stories about that one. For those of you who haven't seen the video, it looks like you're in a men's restroom with glory holes in the restroom. We tried very, very hard to find a restroom that would allow us to put glory holes. We could not find them, so we actually had to build that set on a soundstage. And I'm just going to shout him out. Frankie Nasso was the video director, and he was absolutely incredible. Nova Entertainment. He moved on now. He's doing Harry Belafonte documentaries. He's a big deal. But at that time, he still is my favorite music video director. But he just went all out. Bought toilets, bought the whole thing, plumbed it. It made a restroom, right? To be able to do that. All shot on one stage. The craziest thing that happened on that shoot, though, is that if you remember, there are a series of religious figures that go in and out of the glory holes, and one of them is Jesus. And that guy was known as Jesus of Hollywood. He was this guy that just went around Hollywood like Spider-Man, and you could get your picture taken with him. And the band kind of knew him, and so that's how we got him in the video. He very slyly did not sign the release form on set. And we didn't catch it until I'd say probably 48 hours before the video was about to come out. And so then we started reaching out and saying, hey, we just need you, you forgot to sign this. And then he starts saying, well, I didn't know what the video was going to be, and I didn't know what was going to be in it. And we were like, yo, buddy, we've got all this B-roll of you on set singing along with the midget, with the, whatever else. Exactly what you were doing. Yeah. It was very hairy, and the video almost got killed at the last minute, which is a really big deal because the video is what made that song.
Yeah, of course.
And it's a great song, but that video with the song just to another level. And at the last hour, he said that he would sign it as long as he was allowed to come to Steel Panther shows again. I swear to God, didn't even want any money.
Because he made a mess of all this, and he was scared that he couldn't come again to the shows at the band. That shows the powerful connection you can have between a band, a music, and a fan. He was a fan after all.
Yeah. It would, which I still don't understand why he made any of the choices that he made. We were ready to pay him off, but it just didn't even need to happen. So
it's very interesting because artists are artists, and they can make irrational choices and decisions. Do you have some examples of irrational choices and decisions? How do you, or better, how do you react when this happens? When an artist you work with says something, it doesn't make sense. It's not rational, but they still want it, and you can't take it out of their mind and their head. How do you react to that?
It's hard. It's really hard. There's an artist. I'm not gonna use his name. He is actually still a friend of mine. He went through a difficult period in his life, I would say. But we were shooting a music video where there was a kid on set who was supposed to be younger him. And when he got on set, he walked up and realized that the kid had a different color eyes than he did. Looked the kid in the eyes, and he just said, "Whoops," and walked onto his trailer and was like, "Not shooting the video." And he ended up coming around a little bit later, which was great. I'll tell you another one, which is really funny. There's a band who have a huge song that I didn't work, but a huge song from the early 2000s. We were working their kind of comeback record. Didn't have a lot of money, so the videographer and I drove. First time I met this director too. He was just like, well, I'll just drive to North Carolina. And I was like, all right. So I just met him in Jersey and we drove to North Carolina.
That's a long road.
Yeah. Crazy story in and of itself. But we got there, set up the video shoot, filmed everybody in the band, but could not find the lead singer. Searched for hours and hours and hours. Finally found him. He was on a bender. Got him to set, and then spent, I think, an hour and a half trying to convince him that he needed to be in the video. He kept saying, I don't have to be in the video. No, I don't have to be in the video. Unbelievable emotional roller coaster. I think we got 2 takes out of him. And probably because of how emotional the rest of the day was, I'm trying to temper myself here, but I remember watching those 2 performances and being like absolutely moved and just being like, this is why this guy has a career. Because just the delivery, I was just like, oh, wow. Yeah, but
Amazingly talented.
tons of demons, and that's a big thing you have to remember too. A lot of the times, we can get off on a big tangent on this one, but I speak about this a lot with people. We need to do a much better job of discussing and addressing mental health in the music industry, because when you take an 18, 19, 20-year-old person and give them millions of dollars and a bunch of people around them who go, yes, 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 you create monsters. Like I have my own face tattooed on my arm, all right? I got that when I was 17 because I thought it was a really good idea when I was drunk at a party. I was in a band at that time. If you had given me $1 million, they would be comparing Axl Rose to me.
You talked about like seeing some artists getting some success and hits. Did you have some experience of seeing some of them like getting finally to that point where they have a hit or they have something really happening and getting depressed or getting like some kind of blues after that?
I mean, not just depression, fear is the thing that really needs to be discussed, not depression. Because the reality is every single musician out there gets up every day, puts their pants or their skirt or whatever on the same way and writes a song the same way they wrote every other song they've ever written. And when the public goes, well, we like number 13, we don't like number 26, and they go, well, but 26 is like fundamentally a better song, and they go, yeah, but we like 13. And you go, well, why? We don't know, we just like 13, right? And once you've had a 13 that's a big hit and it's happening, you now have a business and you have crew members with families and you have people whose livelihoods are depending on you. Expectations. And not just expectations, just like moral obligations now to help these people feed their family. You've asked them to go on the road with you, to do whatever for you. You got to pay them. They've got to eat. You've got to eat. And you're just looking at the fans going, well, but how do I do 13 again? And they go, we don't know. We just liked that one. Like, it's abject horror. It is fear because there is no logic to it and there's no way to engineer it and no way to understand it. And anybody that tells you they can is lying.
Unless maybe they have like a support system or they're like surrounded by the right people to try to understand it. But I guess it's still so hard.
That pressure is still there. It doesn't matter. Even with the support system, and I hope every artist has it, you're still under that same pressure. You're still in that same world. And every single one of them, when Metallica decided this last year to do stadiums and do 2 nights in a row, I know for a fact that they were worried about selling those tickets. That's why they put every other big heavy band on the planet on those shows, because they were like, can we do 2 nights in a row? Metallica, the biggest metal band that's ever been, right? It doesn't matter who you are in the music industry. Every single day you wake up and go, can I do this again today? And you have no idea how you did it yesterday.
And so everyone, they're showing a lot of confidence, but you said like everyone has like self-doubt a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. It's impossible not to. And if you don't, it's either Dunning-Kruger or it's a giant, giant ego. And, look, you need a certain amount of ego, and hopefully people can be healthy and find ways to use that ego when it's necessary, but keep it in check otherwise.
So what's next for you now? Like changing completely like the subject, but what's next? Like what are you excited about?
Like I said, I took a 7-year break from Icalia, but the band is back together, and I'm playing Friday night actually, which I'm sure will be long gone by the time this comes out. But yeah, I'm writing new music, struggling with guitar players, but writing new music. and
Still guitar players.
still struggling with guitar players. So I'm excited and hopeful for that. I'm hoping that, you know, that's going to be something there. I think I have a better understanding of who the band is now than I did before. Unfortunately, I'm also not an angry 26-year-old anymore, so that, you know, makes it a little bit different. But then business-wise, you know, my company is doing well. I'm very excited about the clients I have and their success. I'm excited about the future for all of my primary clients. I'm always looking for new artists. And then I actually have a few other little fun things that I'm working on the business side that I'm going to be launching soon, which I guess actually I'll tell you about one because this probably will be out before this is out. I'm launching a retail media network specifically for heavy music locations. So if you know what a retail media network is, in layman terms, basically screens running ads in bars, restaurants, tattoo shops, head shops, record stores, etc., that cater to people who like heavy music, running only ads for heavy music artists. So I'm very excited about that. We're
super cool. Excited to see where it's going. Would you have one word you'd say to your past self? Like, if you could talk to your past self from when you were like 17 or maybe 25 when you were starting, what would you tell yourself?
It wouldn't be one word. That's for sure. That's for sure. Which I'm sure you can tell from this interview. I would try and find a way to get myself to step back, to just look at things with more context, and to try and to educate myself enough to understand my true place in the artistic journey and in the industry, and where my project is in that. You know, I think that's always a tough thing for people to do, but I would say understanding that context has been one of the more difficult things I've had to do.
Thank you very much, Jason. I don't think I have anything else to ask.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
You've been an awesome guest. I hope like everyone's going to like it as much as I did. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was the Indie Pulse presented by Groover with Jason Lekberg. Thank you very much.